fiercely pursuing accountability on policy and implementation. It's time for another DJ Elf 7 candidate interview.
I'm ready.
Come on!
Check it out, this is DJ Elf 7. As you know, I'm interviewing candidates from all over the nation for my project called the Unified Platform. Very proud to have actually this local candidate on that we've been conversing behind the scenes, but I'm going to let him introduce himself. Go ahead.
I'm Joshua Bristol. I'm running for Congress in New York 9. I'm going to take on Yvette Clarke and get another APAC liberal out of power, challenging the establishment.
Okay, cool. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're running?
Yeah, so I'm a philosopher. I majored in philosophy. I'm also an activist. I've been in both Bernie Sanders campaigns in 2016, 2020, and I've also done immigrant advocacy work down in Florida. But I've always been really interested in class consciousness. I've always been really aware of being poor basically, and not having a lot of money, and seeing the way that there's a lot of inequality in our world. And so I've always been interested in seeing how I could get our priorities pushed forward. Representation, that's what it's all about.
Okay.
But it's been a challenge for sure. Right now, we have a fascist administration going on, and I'm just looking around and seeing so many horrible things happening to everybody around me. And it seems like one of those things where, okay, it's time to get off the bench, or it's time to actually get out there and do something.
Okay, if I could just ask for some clarification on some of the things that you talked about. You said that, I believe that you said, this is my first time, I did see that you were a philosopher before. I did not know you were into East Asian philosophy, or if that's what it is. Can you tell me a little bit more about your philosophical studies or understanding?
Yeah, so I majored in philosophy at San Jose State University back in California. So I have a bachelor's in philosophy. Basically, my center of studies was moral philosophy, but I also have a big grounding in metaphysics and antiquity. All the different logic even too, but my big push was ethical and moral philosophy. So Peter Singer, you've got the moral relativism debate, things like that is what I'm interested in. And what I like to study is how can we make the world better for everyone. So I guess it's it's kind of how can we make things better for everyone?
Okay.
Utilitarianism, basically.
Interesting. Okay, so maybe not so much Eastern philosophy, more, I mean, maybe it is Western philosophy, like influence or something like that, but I was just being, of some relation to East Asia myself, right? Did you have, because you mentioned Singer, who are some people are you East Asian philosophy study, or?
No, it's not really East Asian philosophy. I did take a East Asian philosophy class. So I definitely have a grounding in, for instance, Taoism, maybe even a little bit of Confucianism, and of course the legalist tradition in ancient China. And I've studied other things like
Interesting. Okay.
the
Also,
religion and
okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's good to know. Another thing that you talked about is you said the current fascist administration. I've always felt it was a little confusing. What is fascism?
Well, fascism is basically a system. It's like an authoritarian system of cooperation between corporations and the government, is how I understand it. And it's the layman's interpretation for sure. But basically, authoritarian edicts are handed down that benefit the imperialist status quo and work to expand it.
Okay, interesting. I do agree with the authoritarian standpoint of part of that definition. I have heard some different theories about like, supposedly it's been often attributed to Mussolini, the idea of the merger between corporate and state, but sometimes that's challenged. That's for another discussion, but it's good to just understand that better. So some people may not be clear about, right? Because different people have different definitions for different things. But it's good
Yeah.
to know what your definition is. Okay. So moving on, I want to ask my next question is, do you have a political ideology? Some people say socialism. Some people put socialism against capitalism. Then you also have like other movements like conservatism or progressivism. So it doesn't have to follow economic scale, but and you can mention a couple of them, right? But do you have any particular overarching political ideologies?
Yeah, well, my overarching one would definitely be democratic socialism, which is, it's like socialism, but done democratically. Now, some people would say that socialism is inherently democratic, so it's kind of like you don't really need to add the democratic part, but I like that the current trend is to say democratic socialism, because a lot of people try to say that socialism has an authoritarian past, and it's really not true. But of course, I'm also a part of the progressivism. There's some overlap there. Um, uh,
Interesting. Well, I'm really thankful for you actually participating because usually DSA members don't actually come on for interviews, the ones that I've met. But also I feel like the DSA members that people know about, like the squad and things like that, have a lot of people chasing them down because they have a lot of press coverage and stuff like that. You're kind of like a grassroots DSA member. I haven't heard about you on TV or stuff like that, right? You're not really being promoted like, in larger ways. A lot of the DSA members that do end up coming up, and it happens in all the systems, right? But you usually find about DSA members that are more being backed by big money somehow, or right, they're conventionally attractive and they're being invested in by party leadership because they want them to, do as they're told, whatever. So it's very cool to meet people on the ground. I think we all have things in common. But so I'm sorry to go a little bit more in depth on this, but when you talk about democratic socialism versus socialism, DSA, there's many different socialist groups like Socialist Worker or Workers' World. Maybe they call themselves communists. I don't know, but there's socialists of the world, whatever, right? Is there, when you say Democrat Socialist, is that because you're choosing Democrat Socialist or DSA over the other socialist groups, or do you kind of like you cool with all of them?
well, DSA is like a big tent organization, so I can't actually speak for them. Obviously, I just speak for myself, but my understanding is that DSA is like a big tent organization that has a lot of different people in there. There's a lot of different socialist traditions. There's Maoism, there's Leninism, there's Trotskyism, and many others. Um,
Yeah.
my version of socialism is um, well, there's like the World Socialist Movement, which is part of the Socialist Party of Great Britain. They're like, it's basically a revolutionary. They're not electoral. Nobody's electoral these days, but but they're like a revolutionary socialism that is focused on like peaceful revolution. So it's not like an authoritarian left or like the so-called tanky left, anything like that. And it's not Leninist or Trotskyist or Maoist. So it's just like it's just world socialism. Eventually, we're going to work towards a socialist government that's worldwide. That's the goal. And some would say communism is the end goal, but we have to get to socialism first. So
Thank you for
yeah,
making that clear. I really would like to at some point get all the socialists in the room together so I could really understand what the differences are, but they're quite resistant to that. But thank you for helping us understand your personal connection to socialism, right? Because there's so many different flavors of it. It's hard to really know what that really means. Okay. So also to help us as in terms of like, understanding what that is right, with the ideology, I would ask who are your influences. So sometimes people say as a Democrat, right, they say, well, I'm a New Deal Democrat, so I'm influenced by FDR. Or someone might say, oh, I'm a Clinton Democrat because I believe in the Southern strategy, or I believe in like these other types of things, right? They'll have different ideas. So it doesn't have to be within right socialism, but it could be other things that influence you as well. But who is influential to the way that you would be running right your office? Maybe as a
Uh,
manager or as a political leader. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. So Bernie Sanders for sure. One of my biggest inspirations, and also just the leadership that he's been able to bring has been monumental. If you just look back in 2016 when this all started, I see my current struggles as a continuation of the movement that he began, and of course it transcends. It's all the same struggle, but it transcends just Bernie, of course. But that's like kind of the impetus of where like this movement for worker emancipation in the United States, I believe, began. Um, so yeah, definitely FDR is inspiration. AOC definitely a leader that I've tried to model myself after.
Okay.
Um, she I cannot obviously endorse every single thing that she's done, but just the ability to come up out of nowhere, even Abraham Lincoln, although, of course, I can't endorse everything he did either, but that was like, I guess, one of the first times in American history that somebody has been able to come up out of, the lower classes, quote unquote, the lower classes, and been able to get out into power. And when I was growing up in school, they taught us that that was basically impossible these days. So that's what's really kept me from my aspirations of getting some really help for all the people that we have in this country that are struggling. Um, was that knowledge that there's no way that you can get into power, but AOC showed me that in the modern times you can. And of course, Zoran, we haven't seen him actually do any leadership because it's only the second day of his administration. But yeah, all the stuff that he's doing, he's a great inspiration to me as well, of course.
Yeah. Well, he was in state assembly for almost a full term, so
Oh, there you
it's
go.
not like he didn't have opportunities to do. He did some things too, actually, which I could even tell
Yeah.
stories about. But that's okay, interesting, right? So good to know, right? And that's you have some of your people that are inspirational right around you that are you see in real time. So I think that's going to be very valuable. I think it's pretty cool. All right, so now the thing is that different candidates come to this series, right, with different levels of some of them are beginners, some of them more experienced. To help us, to help my audience differentiate between the candidates, what are you most proud of accomplishing? And sometimes people say their kids. I ask people not to use that answer. If you could keep it to something that's more related to management or this particular job, I would appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, definitely I'm proud that I graduated from college with a bachelor's degree in philosophy. I think that's a big addition to, Plato said that philosophers should rule. And now that I'm not saying that I agree with that perspective, but the main point of that is anyone who's going to go into leadership should be able to think deeply and critically about issues rather than just making decisions quickly. So I'm really proud I did that, and I was only the second person in my family to do it. Um, so that's a huge accomplishment for me. I am proud that I've teached life skills to like I've tutored life skills to high schoolers. Um, that's been really good. I mean, everyone always needs to learn their own life skills, including me. So helping them helps me as well. Um, I've done that. I was proud to be a part of the Florida Immigrant Coalition. We did a campaign about the census that was back in 2020. A lot of the immigrant community is scared of the census. They're probably even more scared now, but back then it was a big thing. And so I was out there canvassing the streets, letting them know that it's okay to get counted in the census, and you'll end up helping yourself and your neighbors if you do so. So
Do you speak
um,
any languages besides English?
no, not really. I was born in the center of the country, or I was born in New York City, but I grew up in the center of the country, like kind of where it's very white
Yeah.
mostly, although there's a lot of Hispanics in the area that I grew up in. But I speak a little bit of Spanish, but just enough to like have like
Get
a
around.
station or
Eat
something.
something with somebody, not really have a real conversation. I understand. I'm the
Yeah,
same way.
like
Yeah.
yeah, like well, like I work in retail and I can do a full sale in Spanish for the people that come, and if they have questions or something, I can answer their questions in a simple way. I've also studied Japanese for a long time, but I'm far from fluent in that.
I understand. Well, that's good to know. All right. Well, so I think speaking Spanish is important, and also that's one of the barriers that I would like to work more with the immigrant community, but the language barrier is actually something that really gets in the way. So I'm not really able to organize with that community, unfortunately. Uh,
Yeah,
anyways, yeah. Okay. So the next question is going to be, what is your area of expertise, and why is it needed for your constituents?
so yeah, my area of expertise is probably morality and ethics. I mean,
Okay.
it doesn't take that much of expertise to know that what we're doing is wrong. You know, taking out boats, fishing boats in Venezuela, locking people up without due process. I've studied philosophy of law as well in my studies. So you know that goes to like the whole legal framework of like in what way is our government's empowered to hand out laws in the first place, you know? Like, you know, back in the old days, there was the divine right of kings. Now, you know, we have quote unquote democratic government, governmentation and representation. So, yeah, my area of expertise is being able to tell right from wrong, um,
That's
and
interesting.
looking.
I also took some ethics class myself. I'm just going to ask you a couple side questions here that's not really part of the usual thing, but I appreciate your depth in this as I do have some personal connection to these ideas here. So one of the common ethical right law questions that you get caught in the beginning, these railroad questions,
Yeah,
what I'm talking. If you pull the lever, it'll run over one person, but if you don't pull the lever, it'll run over five people, right?
right.
Do you pull the lever?
So that one, it depends on if you're a deontologist or a utilitarian. I tend to go more utilitarian, but like for Immanuel Kant, say that an action like a goodwill has to do with like your own like action. So like you know if you are thinking like that, like if you want to just have a goodwill, then it's a bad idea to pull the lever because then you're like choosing consciously to murder somebody or even five people or whatever it is. But then if you're going utilitarianism, then you just want to save the most people possible. But it becomes really hard to have a clear answer on utilitarianism because then you get into like the moral calculus and how happy are those people? How happy is the other guy? like what's like what are the future and past of these people? Is it politicians or just regular people? So basically, most of the time, I choose not to pull the lever because I don't want to commit a harmful act on purpose. But yeah, like I said, it depends on the moral framework that you're using.
The first half of the interview was really learning about yourself as a person, right? People might not know who you are. But the second half of the interview is really to ask about your policies. So usually I always put my partners first, but this year I'm taking an exception. I'm putting myself first, my issue on the front. So first question about but we're going to ask all these questions about myself and my partners. I'm going to go to like some of the bigger ideas, right? So the first thing is when we look at Israel-Palestine, there are many other areas of conflict such as Korea, right? Namibia, things like that. What is your vision for peace in the face of foreign domestic interference? And I know before you mentioned IPAC, that's definitely part of the question right there. IPAC donates huge amounts of money. They're definitely altering foreign policy with their huge amounts of money. How can you help fix that?
Right. Well, I mean, of course, long term, we'll have like a world socialism where I don't know if it's going to be one world government or be like make the United Nations more powerful. Um, that would be a thing. Like, I mean, that's all long term, but I think it is a good idea to make the United Nations more powerful. Like, if we had like a global like peacekeeping force, that actually had power that could, go into places and settle disputes. The problem, of course, the United Nations is very weak, and it also has like there's veto powers, so that needs to all be reworked. Um, but yeah, for peace, I mean, we only have one planet, and the resources are finite. So eventually, like no matter who's taking resources away from another, it's just shifting things around. It's not really gonna. I mean, it changes who gets the resources for sure, but like the resources are all still there. So with socialism, eventually you'll be able to get an accurate measure of what where these resources are at and how we can use them, and then it'll be fairly distributed, to the people. And like borders and nationalism is a huge problem to work on in general, especially ultra nationalism. But I mean, like, I'm not saying we should open all the borders necessarily, but for instance, there's places where there's like mass desertification going on. So, just like, oh, that's your country, you have to hang out over there. It's kind of messed up. Eventually, we're gonna have to, either let people come over to other areas where there's not as much desertification, or, um, you know, it's all one planet in the end. And you know, going back to the thing about corporations, I was a big watcher of Captain Planet growing up, and all those evil corporations doing bad things. And I'm not sure I would say that we should make them illegal corporations, but we have to, for instance, Citizens United needs to be overturned, and corporate power needs to be rebalanced back towards the worker, which is central to my platform.
I'm
But
actually one of the original people working on Wolfpack, and I do agree with you. I really look forward to working with you further on these issues because I agree with a lot of things that you're saying. The socialism thing I'm not so sure about, but I'm sure we can find a happy medium somewhere. Okay.
for
The
sure.
next group, yeah, and I liked your answer because even though, right, it doesn't really talk about the foreign interference, like you have more of a humanitarian viewpoint versus, right, kind of like nationalist viewpoint, and I think that I believe any system can work as it's really more about the people for me than the actual ideologies. So I hear a lot that we have in common. I appreciate that. The next
So
group that I work with, appreciate that. Yeah, the next group that I work with is people in public housing, and the United States actually is one of the few countries in the developed world that will no longer have a public housing system very soon. Um, we are knowing our most vulnerable people live there: elderly, people with disabilities, people who are veterans. Would you support a continuation of public housing, aka Section 9?
definitely, I would support the continuation of public housing. I mean, this is not public housing, but the rent freeze that Zoran has proposed, I fully support. We have to. Housing is a human right. That should be the baseline. Now, if we increase public housing, then the prices will go down, I guess, and build more. I'm very EMB, if you know about EMB, yes, in my backyard. So everything should be built everywhere. Totally, public housing should be a thing. Under socialism, there's still like property. Like, let's say you have a cup or something that you use at your house. You're still gonna have, yeah, it's not like everybody gets to use your stuff or whatever, but it's just like, yeah, the property isn't all sectioned off and fenced off, so you can't go anywhere and you can't do anything. And the means of production, basically, as they say, are decommoditized, so that everyone will be able to have access to it. So yeah, definitely public housing. I think that there should be a lot more buildings of them, and also maintenance of them, because I don't know if you heard, in Queens recently there was like a big explosion of public housing. nobody was harmed in that, but that's a big thing. Are we, how, when were these places built? How well are they maintained? Obviously, you don't want any hazards in these houses. They need to be respectable houses that anyone would be proud to live in. And not only that, but when there's new developments going up, there needs to be massive amounts of reserves of low-income housing, and those not like greater than the amounts that we have now. And yeah, it's got to be decommoditized. There's so many houses. If you look around Midtown, I'm sure in my district here in New York 9, but everywhere you look, there's empty houses that are just sitting there because the people that are the landowners, they know that the prices will go up later. So why not hold on to it? Well, we have to end that practice. So there's so many different ways that you can work in housing. And I've been a part of some small rent strikes around the district that are like where there's really troubling landlords. There's a DSA working group around that I'm looking into joining as well.
Cool. Okay, I actually have some interaction with some of that group from before, so we'll talk about that probably at the end of the stream. Okay.
Totally.
The group that I work with is the trans community. Now the thing is that this next question will be a hypothetical question to help us understand like how you come up with solutions. So in this case, we know that trans people face a lot of discrimination from jobs, from housing, things like that. Not that something I understand it. I'm not saying that I approve of it, but it's something I understand. Now the thing is that let's suppose that we do that 10% of people. This is all hypothetical once again. That 10% of people applying for public housing are self-identify as trans. But if we do a study and we see that only 1% of people in public housing are trans, so we say, why is there discrepancy? So we start to talk to the trans people that are in the public housing. We say, why do you think that this is happening? They say we're getting beaten up, we're getting discriminated against, right? And they say like even though there's laws protecting them from discrimination, you can still see this discrepancy happening. So what do you think is now the thing is I'll throw a couple different possible solutions out there and the problems with them. I don't want to have a gotcha moment, unfair. But the thing is that if we say, like, some people might say, oh, let's put them all into one building so they'll be safer. But that could be like ghettoization, right? Can you imagine we took all the black people and put them into one building, one neighborhood in the city? That's controversial. Another idea that sometimes gets actually almost nobody supports quotas, right? If I say let's bring up the number of trans people to 10%. This is also even with the progressive rights. I think almost maybe 2 or 3 people have recommended quotas as a way to solve this solution. But once again, this brings up the question of how do you bring in the numbers as in terms of impacting your proposed solutions? Do you use those? Do you not? Right? Do you disregard those numbers? What's your approach?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely tricky. People always seem to fear things that they don't understand. I think that as the trans movement continues on, there'll be more and more exposure to it, and that'll help ease the problem. I think there should be like not necessarily a quota, but like a drive, like let's reach out to the trans community. There's houses available, something like that.
So how do you assure them fair access to public, services though? So you say you're going to open up more, right? If you say that there's existing public housing and they can't get in, they could build more. You could allocate that for the community.
Have to have policies like that say, anti-discrimination policies or something like that. That would, ease any kind of restrictions, or like if they're not being let in, you have to let them in. I don't think we should have separate buildings for trans people. They're just regular people like anybody else. I think one thing that you could do is you could have, most living quarters don't have public restrooms, but obviously the whole public restrooms thing, there could be ungendered bathrooms. I definitely support that where I've seen it. And I mean, yeah, there's any. I mean, basically, I think if you, I would focus more on like income inequality. So like, if a large amount of like low income people are joining, that's good. Now, if we saw those not as many trans people as, and we would want, we'd have to look and see, if that community is being, harmed in a certain way that, stops them from getting access to it. I don't know. That's definitely a tricky issue for sure.
Yeah, I just thinking off the top of my head, if I was a trans person myself, right? If I heard of this discrepancy, I probably would not be satisfied until I heard that that number was the same, right? I'd say there's 1% there, there's 10% there. Why, that sounds on its base unfair. So I would be unhappy with that. But I also understand the challenges with coming up with a reasonable solution that people could start to change their self-identification method to try to qualify for these particular slots, right? We know that right? I think Mom Donnie called himself African American. I mean, like I understand these things do have consequences, right? Identifying one way or the other. So, and are Arabics from Egypt, right? African Americans, or are they Arabic? Like people might have different thoughts or feelings about that, right? Because Egyptians are more Arabic looking than actually black. So people might be, I have a different friend. Not that, Mom Donnie is Egyptian, but there is that type of question about what goes on, right? How do you define, right? What is this? What is that, right? So very unclear. But I appreciate your answer. I think it was pretty good. Let's move on to the next group that I work with, the victims of academic administrator abuse. Now the thing is that we know that certain industries like acting, stuff like that, where young people are involved and their careers are ahead of them, they can be treated right with a unnecessarily cruel or exploitative ways. And the thing is that right now, Corey Edens has been a victim of administrator abuse by by officials at CUNY, right? The administrators, not the professors, I'm saying, but more the professor, more the administration. I think a lot of students have faced this. Another thing recently was we had a U.S. presidential candidate come on from Chicago, Illinois, and he said the reason why the United States gives all these money to these schools is try to produce graduates who can be productive members of society, not to determine their politics. So if they're actually trying to withdraw the students' degrees for their political stance, we should just take away the money from those schools, which makes a lot of sense to me. We're trying to get a meeting between myself, Corey Edens, along with the CUNY chancellor and the Hunter College president to have a public discussion about the way that university and college administrators handle student discipline issues and things like that. Would you support a public meeting between us to talk about these issues?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I've had my own problems with the administration in schools when I was in university too. It's very hard to get somebody like to see you, like a guidance counselor or whatever. They're very busy. They're understaffed, and a lot of the money that these schools get doesn't really go to helping the students. It goes to like, let's say, building more buildings or other like projects that real estate projects that these colleges are trying to do so they can get more money. And yeah, so the students are definitely left by the wayside. There's a huge problem with access to the administration for disabled students or students that might have any physical challenges, which I definitely experienced as well. There's a huge problem with the administration for foreign students. I remember when I was in college, I had some Japanese roommates, and they needed help with something like, I need to get into this class or whatever, and they didn't speak English very well, and it was very hard for them to understand the judgments that were being handed down. the decisions that were being made, or to even just get any access to help at all. And of course, they're spending a lot of money as a foreign student, so that's a huge problem as well. Yeah, I would definitely be interested in ways that we and others can brainstorm how to make the administration of these universities a lot more responsive.
Sounds amazing. I really appreciate that. All right, let's move on to talk about the thing is that there's a bunch. Like, we know I don't know if you know the statistics for imprisonment for racial categories, but black people are jailed at 5 times the rate of white people. There is excessive, people that are politically weak get persecuted more, and this is just a fact, right? Now the thing is that right now, I work with the wrongfully incarcerated, some of the longest wrongfully incarcerated men in the nation, and also in New York City. And one of the issues going on is that, I'm actually Republican, just so you know, and in Texas, right? Unfortunately, the Republicans will kill you. They are for the death penalty, right? Which is actually something I personally do not support. But they're also, just so you know, they also have the highest exoneration rate in the nation. So the fact of the matter is that, yeah, they'll kill you, but if they mess up, they're the most likely to admit that they were wrong and to set you free. Not only that, but Texas also has the most generous wrongful incarceration compensation law, which I think is still very, very low. But for each year of wrongful incarceration, you get $50,000 for each year that you're wrongfully incarcerated. Now, some of the people that I work with, in Pennsylvania's key swing state, has no wrongful incarceration law whatsoever. And Vincent Moore, the first man freed on DNA evidence in Philly, Pennsylvania history, despite his iconic status, has never even received a penny of any compensation for his wrongful incarceration. Would you support a wrongful incarceration, at least, right, of $50,000 for people that have been wrongfully incarcerated or more, right?
Yeah, totally. I'm not certain of the status of it nationally, or even really in New York State, but I definitely would support something like that. Now, there's a whole bunch of issues. There's an emancipation working group in the DSA. Also, I haven't really gotten the chance to be part of it yet, but their main issue is getting people out of the prisons. Cool. The United States is one of the largest incarceratory states on the planet, and
it's not. Maybe it is.
Yeah, it is.
By a lot. By a lot. It's not even by a little bit. It's like by
totally.
Huge amounts. Yeah.
So we need to there's a lot of older cases that happened back in the old days when we didn't have access to some of the more advanced technology. We need to go back over all these older cases and check. There's the huge problem of voting rights for incarcerated people. That's one of the main ways that you're taken off the voter rolls. When I was in Florida, there was some legislation to get people that were formerly imprisoned back onto the voter rolls, but that there was some shenanigans with the governor, and that was, I think, shut down. So that's.
I really appreciate that. And just so you know, that guy who I mentioned earlier, that presidential candidate, is actually formerly incarcerated. He actually is running for Attorney General of Illinois. And just so you know, the things that you're talking about are all 100% true. Also, the thing is that prisons, because they're large populations, are often used for gerrymandering purposes. So there's a lot of other shenanigans that go into this, but you are more aware of these issues than the average candidate. I really appreciate it. So that shows me some authenticity, and I appreciate that.
No worries. I could definitely talk about it more. There's for-profit prisons. There's a labor that you get. Like I'm telling you, somehow or other, if I was ever arrested, I would not do a single cent of work, because all that work is just going right to some corporation.
Hopefully, well, they don't give you enough food, so you kind of need to have a hustle to survive. So they tried to think one step ahead, unfortunately, but I feel what you say. I'm with you.
Yeah. The solitary confinement issue, how that's causes despair in people that are for long term.
Yeah, absolutely.
Penalty, of
That's also
course.
is. Go ahead.
The death penalty, of course, should be looked at. There's a large amount of innocent conviction rate. That needs to be addressed as well.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move on to the next question. The thing is that in activism, a lot of times the activism is kind of like taken over by one millionaire force versus another millionaire force, while the people that are actually affected by the issue have no voice at all, right? We see the Jeffrey Epstein victims, no voice at all. And, you take a look at the Nick Shirley thing, a lot of people are giving that a lot of credit now. If you heard about the Somali daycares in Minnesota, why aren't they talking to any of the parents that try to enroll their kids in the daycare? Why aren't they talking to people that were competing with them for the grants? Instead, some outsiders shuttled in, right, to criticize the system, but the people that were affected, no one cares about them, which is very weird and I feel like artificial. What can you do to help protect communities, who are being silenced?
Well, yeah. And basically, we have to do what we first we have to find out what's happening. I think that this whole thing with the Somali community, I haven't really been following it because of a lot of racism surrounding it.
Okay.
But assuming that it is legitimate, that there is a legitimate controversy there, yeah, I mean, finding out what exactly it was that happened is step one. Same thing with the Epstein files, I mean, certain people higher up in the hidden enclaves of government know what really happened, but most people don't, and maybe a few people in Congress know. But once we have those facts laid bare, then we can take appropriate action against the people that did the bad things, and also remuneration or restoration for the people that were impacted, whatever that means, whether it's monetary restitution. I believe in restorative justice, so I'm not necessarily like wanting revenge. And I mean, like
Yeah,
revenge can take many
right.
forms, but um,
Yeah, it's quite, I'm a Republican myself, but it's just so you know, the way that the whole messaging is being put around the whole Somali daycare thing is actually a construct by the establishment and does not actually represent the true feelings of the community, right? There's no real, right, in the, once again, I'm not saying that everything that Nick Shelley did was bad, but you can see that the way his work is being used to weaponize against the crooked Democrats, but who's caring about the actual children that's missing out on, right? They don't seem to care about that at all, and there's no talk about that at all. So honestly, I don't represent that, and I encourage my other Republicans to start. I think some of them do have their eyes open, but just as the same thing's going on in Democrat world, it happens in both worlds. The establishment is controlling the message for both of our parties, and just the way their elites are working together to try to make us go to war with each other, we can do the same thing back, and we can also work together, right, to actually take care of the community instead of worrying about some outsiders being poured in to manage the narrative in some weird artificial way. Yeah. So
totally.
yeah, the next group that I'm also, and the last group that I'm working with, and this thing, then we can go on to talk about your particular priorities. But the last one is the right to repair. I don't know if you heard of something called right to repair. Have you ever heard of this concept?
Yeah.
Okay, just to explain to people right quick who might not be familiar with the idea. The thing is that nowadays you can get your oil changed in your car anywhere garage you want, right? But the thing is that this didn't used to be true before the industry tried to lock it down and say, you have to come to my dealership. Whoever sold you the car, you have to come to my dealership to get your oil changed. So because of right to repair that was fought earlier, this is now. But nowadays you can't fix your phone, right, unless you go specifically to the Apple store. There's predatory contracts. In fact, even Biden had to stop the military contractors from engaging in predatory right to repair issues. This is even affecting our tractors that harvest the food that we eat, causing huge problems and backlogs as in terms of farmers, because the company doesn't have any that you're a captive audience. So, even if your crops are ripe and ready to pick, they don't have to send someone to fix out your tractor for like a month. And then by that time, your crops have all spoiled. They're no good. So this is a matter of our infrastructure just working as well. So if you want to add anything to that, but thank you for supporting Right to Repair.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say a few things, but it's mostly all what you said: the tractors, the phones. You know, if your computer breaks down, you can like go out to the back if you know how to do it. You can unscrew the screws and you can replace your battery. You can go buy a new battery, but like these days, a lot of these things you can't do that no more. So it's really it's like a commoditization of basically. I mean, it's like it's kind of like
It's
planned
anti-consumer. It's anti-consumer
Yeah,
practices.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you know, that's like a huge problem. There's even other things like let's say when you go to buy a video game on the PlayStation store, and then later the publisher takes it down. Like in some cases, you might not have access to that game anymore. You won't be able to re-download it again. So you're buying stuff. Basically, you're buying air that's not able to be accessed no more. I have a whole bunch of apps on my phone from the very early days of iPhone that are no longer available, and maybe they're really simple and basic apps, but they're apps that I enjoyed at the time and I want to try it again, maybe. And you can't. So there's a whole slew of ways that the corporations are removing access to services and products that we buy. And, you know, that's something that needs to be looked at as well under socialism. It'll definitely be, you know, for instance, like planned obsolescence, you know, there won't be any reason to make something poorly under socialism. You'll make something so it can work, and when it doesn't any longer fulfill its function, then you would be able to send it to some sort of recycling plant or recycling center and have a new one, assuming that the resources were available at large to be able to do that.
Interesting.
You know, there's also innovation. People say that socialism is anti-innovation, but that's not true at all. You'll have the freedom to go out there and explore whatever you want. Right now, you can't because we're stuck in the workplace. So, anyways, that's a whole other issue. But yeah, definitely, you know, it's a huge problem what the corporations are doing.
All right. Well, while position I do agree with you on the right to repair. Some of the other things you said, I'm in disagreement, but that's fine, right? This is really an interview about yourself, not myself. And but I think like on the principles of the issues, I think we have very similar. And I'm really excited to meet you. Now that you've answered the questions about myself and my partners, I appreciate you prioritizing them. We know that you're running for I believe, a national position, a congressional seat.
Yeah, I'm running for the congressional seat of New York District 9. It's currently occupied by Yvette Clarke, a Caribbean American woman who's taken a lot of money from corporations and APEC. She's technically on the Progressive Caucus, but she's not really doing a whole lot to help people. Like I've
Let me
been.
actually ask about something about that right quick, because when we look at the major spending for our country, we know the military is a huge part of the budget, right? You've already spoken, I think, pretty clearly about, like, against like military intervention, which I think is cool. But also a big cost is actually, which is federally put out, right? Welfare, Social Security, things like that. What's your position on entitlements?
Well, welfare. I mean, that people say bad things about the welfare state, but if you look at what happened in the shutdown, it's a huge problem. It needs to be something that people have access to, and yeah, it should definitely be expanded. For instance, one of my core platform policies, obviously Medicare for all, would aim to give the Medicare option that we have for our elderly people to everyone. And you know, people, everybody has a body. It's included in the word everybody. And no matter what you do, eventually you're going to need some medical care. and we already spend a huge amount more money by withholding it, like in things like emergency services and emergency room, and of course the wildly inefficient industry of insurance for medical coverage. So there's a whole lot more that, and of course everybody needs to eat as well. So there's
Can I respond to the Medicare for All thing right quick?
definitely.
Okay, so the thing is that just so you know, I actually was the leader of something, the New York State coordinator for something called the People's Party. And I actually also worked as a medical scribe for multiple emergency rooms, also for a pulmonologist. So, that's for the lungs. And before you go into surgery, you got to see the pulmonologist. So we saw a lot of critical care cases. I also worked for a neurologist. I also worked for a law firm protecting patients from the medical insurance industry. So the thing is that I used to support Medicare for All, and in fact, I was one of the lead organizers for something called the Medicare for All March that went down here in New York City. And I believe there was someone from DSA who was also involved with that particular project as well. But the thing is that I actually turned against Medicare for All, and I'll tell you why. Right? The thing is that I had actually booked a guy called, the Surgeon General of RAP, who was there from day one of RAP. And from my experience of working with the Medicare for All activism movement, right, also like I was interfacing with people from Washington State on the West Coast, and the activism has been like completely gentrified. The people who really get to be heard are the doctors and the nurses, but the patients who have been victims of the industry, we are pushed aside, silenced, and I understand the doctors have more money and more prestige, and I saw actually the way that the poor were treated in the Medicare for All movement. I was so disgusted. And the racism that was also prevalent within that, you could see that a guy who was there from day one of RAP was supposed to be at the Medicare for All march here in New York, and he was pushed aside so that the celebrity Lee Camp and his friend could be the performers at the event. It was so disgusting that I would never trust this activist community to take care of the poor. So
Yeah.
I actually turned against Medicare for All, not because of I disagree with the ideals or just overall compassion, but the what I saw on the ground was just so disgusting. I could no longer be a part of it.
Well, we have to, of course, separate the idea from the way that the means that we have. I mean, let's say even in the Bernie Sanders movement at the time in 2016, there were a lot of people that were saying, "Oh, these Bernie bros are so rude," and Bernie Sanders is not doing anything for people of color, so he had a huge weakness with people of color, and that became like a big self-fulfilling prophecy. Whereas actually it was great with people of color. I'm a perfect example of that. And also he was the Bernie bros were just trying to advocate because there was a Bernie blackout and nobody wanted to let him say anything. And
Yeah.
so,
He was filling stadiums. He was kicking ass. But the thing is that you're right. The corporate media definitely was doing him dirty, and they've done that to a lot of candidates. Just so you know.
mm-hmm. And so yeah, and the thing about like letting everybody speak, that's something that's really important too. And I think the DSA has done a great job of putting forward candidates of color, like telling people to step aside if they're. I mean, it's not that white people shouldn't be able to speak; they definitely have the right to speak. But we should have some of these lesser heard voices. And I've been to some meetings with the DSA where they have a system where like you can talk, but if you've already spoken, let somebody else speak. And it's pretty interesting to see that the way that they're doing democracy. But for to speak to the policy itself, yeah, I mean, maybe some people in the movement have made bad decisions, and that's very possible. I'm not familiar with the exact circumstances you're referring to, but of course, doctors and nurses, the thing about them is doctors are going to be fine. They're still going to get paid under Medicare for All, so we don't really need to worry about them. The primary thing is all for the people. And if you look at places like Australia, places like Canada, you'll see that the outcomes are what's most important, and the outcome in this Medicare for All system is that even if there's lines, even if there's delays, you're getting the top quality care, and you're getting it either for free or at extremely low cost. And that's just something that is not seen here. You know, like I was saying, our Medicare system is extremely wasteful. There's a lot of abuse, and there's a lot of middlemen that are empowered. So if you really want to talk about who is being pushed aside, yeah, it is the patients. And the people that are empowered right now are these bureaucrats, to go back to your point on bureaucracy, that are just pushing paper around, and they're like, well, you know,
Denying claims.
yeah, we're gonna send you to the glue factory because you're no longer. I mean, basically the system of that is like the healthy people pay for the sick people, and so once it becomes so that you're like too sick, you stop being of value anymore to the system, and you get thrust aside, and then you end up with either you don't get preventative care, so your health outcomes are just going to deteriorate over time, and or something big happens that you can't address because you don't have the money to. So, you know, I mean, when I was in the hospital in 2023 for a short stay, I was only there for like a couple of days, and the bill was like $50,000. Now I had Medicaid at the time, so it was like all covered up to like $500 that I had to pay. But still, like, what would I do with a $50,000 debt that hangs over me? And these medical debts, they just pile up on top of you, and there's very limited circumstances that you can get out of it. So it's really a system that is killing people, and the only way that we can make it so that people will be able to get access to the care they need is to just make it so that we have Medicare for all.
I appreciate
That's
that.
only one of my policy positions.
All right. And you did a great job of, I went a little bit harder at you than the other candidates, but you seem to know more about it. So, I felt more comfortable like asking you some of the more difficult questions. Besides the things that we've talked about, are there any other particular priorities or federal, issues that you want to address in this interview? Go ahead.
Yeah. So the biggest priority for me is democratization of the workplace. That's not even getting us anywhere near full socialism, but basically it's like a mass unionization push. So I looked into it, and there's like in the First Amendment, I guess, like there's restrictions on like forcing corporations to unionize because it's like a free speech thing. Like, oh, the way that I'm trying to present myself to the public is that I'm not unionized. I don't know. I don't really fully understand all the stuff about that. The legalese in there, but basically, what we can do though is we can set a large tax on all corporations, or all corporations that would be within our purview as a congressperson, and then offer a subsidy to these corporations that would choose to unionize, either corporations or industries. But basically, in that case, you make it so monetarily like unviable to prevent your workers from organizing, that they basically are like, well, it'll be cheaper for us to actually go and do it. And that's something that it's perfectly that we can perfectly do, because it's extremely powerful. Zoran has a platform right now that he said that we're going to have like the minimum wage be increased, and that's amazing. But let's say I could come to my corporation I work for and set my own pay, my own rate of pay, and say, we're not going to do it unless you raise the pay. And there won't be any way for them to like say, oh, well, we'll just hire scabs and we'll just hire other people, because those people will all be in the union too, or they won't want to join. There needs to be a huge change in how we see unions in this country. So that's mass unionization is another one of my important policy positions.
Interesting. Cool. Okay. That's good to know. So, I think that you're actually one of my favorite candidates that I've interviewed so far. Really appreciate your answers. I'm also you're also my favorite because you're local, right? That means that we have a potential to have ongoing work going on together in a very important realm of activism, local activism, okay, grassroots activism. So, what's your information? Once again, your name is Josh Bristol, right? But do
Joshua
you have
Bristol.
do you have a website? Do you have social media? Do you have you're also running for office. You have like a I think you're on Act Blue, right? How can people donate to your campaign? Why don't you share all that stuff?
Yeah. But before I go into that really quickly, let me just tell you guys also, a 4-day work week is another thing that we have to push. There's the Fair Labor Standards Act, said us that we have a weekend, and that's not enough time to spend with your family. So we're gonna get 4-day work week too, and don't forget about that. Yeah, my Act Blue is actblue.com /donate / Joshua Bristol for the number 4 NY. And then we'll put all the links in the
I'll put
description.
that on the screen. Yeah.
Yeah. And then my Instagram is, let me pull that up really quick here.
Okay, we'll also have that down below in the comments, so you guys can just click on the link. All right, but you could say it if you want. You definitely say it. Yeah. Put it all together.
Yeah. Joshua Bristol for Congress at Joshua Bristol for Congress. All my
F4 or FOR.
FOR in that case, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Instagram is where like I'm trying to really boost it right now. I've gotten a lot of followers since I opened up that platform only like 2 months ago, and that's where like you can see a lot of the stuff that I'm doing like on a day-to-day basis. I also have X platform. Now X is problematic because obviously it's, we know who owns it, but it's still a platform that a lot of people are using, and there's a lot of leftists on there as well, and it's just good for visibility. So it's at Josh Bristol, Josh in that case, not Joshua, Josh Bristol, the number 4, and then NY. So Josh Bristol for NY.
Okay. Very cool.
Those are my main 3.
All right. Now that
my main
people have your information, what do they have to look forward to? You have any campaign events coming up? Maybe a fundraiser, things like that.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get my events website set up. I'm going to be using mobilize.us to set these events up. My biggest push will be like to go to different locations around the city that have a lot of people, and trying to coordinate pledges, whether it's talking to people that are hanging out in the parks or knocking door to door.
Okay.
Just getting people, like I have like a sign up sheet where people can like basically write down all your name, like your name, your email, your phone number, and then those people will be the first people that will reach out to for the signature requirements to get on the ballot, which is what the big push is going to be in late February, early March. I'll have to get 1,250 signatures in a short amount of time. So that's another thing we could talk about, how unfair and how many barriers there are to run for office in New York. I was really lucky to happy to find out that it's actually like free to file with the FEC for a campaign here, where in other states it's
For the voter
not.
database you're talking about, correct?
Well, to register with the FEC, like the voter probably the voter database. Anyways, like there's a lot of money that is supposed to go into these campaigns. I'm only funded by myself and a few donors that have donated so far. Definitely,
Quick
so much.
question. It sounds like you're pretty much in there with DSA. You're going to a lot of meetings, you know, their infrastructure, things like that. How much support are they giving your campaign?
Well, I don't want to talk bad about the DSA. They're amazing. And of course, right now with the Zoran campaign having just ended, and our first socialist mayor entering office, it's a tremendous thing that they've done. But yeah, I'm in the DSA now. The thing is, they have like they had a requirement where you have to submit your proposal to them to request at a certain time. And it was like the beginning of October was when I was getting all this set up, and I didn't want to approach them about my campaign before I had anything set up. So I didn't, and I just only did it on October 1st, and they said the period was closed. So I cannot be officially endorsed by the NYC or the national DSA, but I'm definitely a lot of my core support and people that I've been reaching out to at all these events I'm going to are DSA members, and I'm a DSA member as well. So yeah, it's all just about doing what we can. I initially actually was running in New York 10 because I wanted to take out Dan Goldman, who's a really bad guy over there in New York 10. But the DSA was telling me they wanted to run someone there, so I withdrew from my comrades, and that didn't end up going through. But anyways, that's a whole big thing with the DSA.
But don't you have to live in the district, so you can't just easily switch over from one district to another?
You can, and you don't have to live in the district at all. Like there was a
for House of Representatives. Yeah, I was thinking about New York State's Assembly. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. It's like Paperboy Prince, if you remember his campaign years ago. I think he's doing more now too, but he set up his campaign in every New York district, which I was really surprised to hear. But yeah, like I work in New York 10, so I'm there like a good percentage of my time. But I just wanted to do something good for New York 10 over there. Dan Goldman is a really extremely rich guy. He's even more wealthy than Yvette Clarke, and he takes IPEC money and all the rest as well. So, but
he's
there's
locking down him and Tom Swazi. They're kind of like two pillars of the establishment, money kind of Democrats that kind of run things locally.
Yeah. So he's a really bad guy, but I'm really grateful to be running in my race. It's actually for analysts or whatever, it's a very winnable race. Right now, there's only one other guy. His reach is not really that much greater than mine, although he has a lot more money. But his following and all that is not that much larger than mine. And then there's a Republican in the race, and then the incumbent hasn't officially. She's not up on I don't know what her status is, if she's fully running. I need to get the 1,250 signatures, whatever she does. But she's older, and she has a lot of money. I don't know. We're gonna try to win against her.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you.
It's a dark day in our nation when high-level authorities will seek to use every method to silence dissent. The truth must be told.
And if you want the truth, you need to check out independent media producers just like myself, DJ L7. You should subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notifications when I release a new video.
Truth of these
We are
words
on all
is
the
beyond
major
doubt.
platforms. That includes Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course YouTube. Unfortunately, we have definitely seen that these mainstream outlets will cave to corporate interests, so we encourage you to join our independently moderated communities of Reddit and Discord. We also encourage you to subscribe to us on BitChute and Dailymotion so you can see the content that YouTube doesn't want us to let you see. Hey, now it's time for the most important part of the video. That's right. It's time for us to tell you about the Taking Action Group. Do you need an activist? Or maybe there's no activists around willing to help you with your cause and you need to learn to become an activist. That's exactly why we're here. Every week we get up with people from across the nation, in fact even sometimes internationally, and we develop strategies and a game plan to address the issues that are affecting all of us. Every week myself from New York City and of course my co-host Lisa from Los Angeles provide a coast-to-coast perspective on what's going on in the country. If you want to donate to help out with expenses, travel, equipment, stuff like that, then I definitely appreciate it, and you can hit us off at Venmo or PayPal. Thanks a lot. Hey, by the way, we also have a merch store, so check it out. Oh my goodness, it seems like you've reached the end of the video, so make sure you check out some of our other videos. Make sure you subscribe. This is your last chance to do so thanks a lot. And looking forward to seeing you on the next one. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please comment below if you have any questions or issues you'd like me to address. And if you're an activist, the time to make things happen is now.